The snow fell heavy that December evening in Cedar Falls, each flake catching the amber glow of the streetlights like tiny promises of hope. Emma Martinez pulled her worn cream sweater tighter around her shoulders as she watched from her small apartment window. At 26, she had learned that winter could be both beautiful and unforgiving. Her apartment was modest, just 2 rooms above Mrs. Henderson's bakery, but it was hers. The rent was manageable on her teacher's aide salary, and the smell of fresh bread each morning reminded her of her grandmother's kitchen back in New Mexico. Emma had moved to this small Iowa town 3 years ago, seeking a fresh start after her divorce. She was still building her life, one careful step at a time. The knock on her door came just after 8 o'clock, soft but persistent. Emma hesitated. Visitors were rare, especially on a night like this when the wind howled and the snow showed no signs of stopping. Through the peephole, she saw a man in his early 40s, broad-shouldered beneath a dark winter coat dusted with snow. His beard was neat, his eyes kind but tired. In his arms, he cradled a small boy of perhaps 4 or 5, bundled in a striped winter hat that made him look like a little Christmas ornament. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man said when Emma cracked the door open, keeping the chain latch secure. His voice was gentle, respectful. "My son and our car broke down about a mile back. The snow's getting worse, and the tow truck can't get out until morning. I saw your light and thought, I hope maybe." He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable, asking for help. The little boy stirred in his arms, and Emma could see the child's cheeks were red from the cold. "Please," the man continued quietly, "I understand if you can't help strangers, but my boy is cold, and there's nowhere else to go tonight." Emma studied his face through the crack in the door. Her grandmother had always said you could tell a person's character by looking in their eyes. This man's eyes held worry for his child, but also respect for her position. He wasn't demanding or entitled, just a father trying to protect his son. "What's your name?" Emma asked softly. "David. David Coleman. And this is my son, Jamie." The little boy peeked up at her then, his eyes big and trusting despite the circumstances. Emma's heart melted. She thought of her own childhood, of the times her family had been helped by kind strangers during her father's long illness. Sometimes she remembered, we become the kindness we once needed. "I have a couch," she said, unlatching the chain, "and I think I can find some blankets." David's relief was immediate and genuine. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with gratitude. "I promise we'll be gone first thing in the morning." Emma stepped aside to let them in, noting how David carefully wiped his boots and helped his son do the same. Good manners, she thought. Her grandmother would approve. The apartment felt even smaller with guests, but warmer somehow. Emma set about making them comfortable, pulling extra blankets from her linen closet and putting water on for hot chocolate. Jamie's eyes lit up at the mention of cocoa, and she found herself smiling at his enthusiasm. "Are you hungry?" she asked. "I don't have much, but I could make some grilled cheese sandwiches." "We don't want to impose any more than we already have," David said, but his protest was gentle, and Emma could see the gratitude in his expression. "It's no trouble," she replied, already moving toward the kitchen. "Besides, I was going to eat anyway." As she cooked, Emma learned that David and Jamie were traveling from Chicago to visit David's mother in Denver for Christmas. They had taken the scenic route, David explained, because Jamie loved to see the snow-covered farmland. Their car had simply given up about a mile from town, the engine finally succumbing to the bitter cold. "Daddy's car is really old," Jamie piped up from where he sat on the couch, finally warm enough to be talkative. "But Daddy says old things can still be good if you take care of them." Emma smiled at that wisdom. "Your daddy's right," she said, serving them each a sandwich cut into triangles the way she remembered from her own childhood. As they ate, the conversation flowed naturally. David asked about her work at the elementary school, and Emma found herself sharing stories about her students. After a gentle pause, Emma's natural curiosity about the close bond between father and son led her to ask softly, "Where is Jamie's mother?" David's expression grew tender but sad. "She passed away, unfortunately," he said quietly, glancing at his son with infinite love. "It's been just the two of us for a while now." Emma felt her heart tighten with sympathy. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Understanding now the depth of devotion she witnessed between them, David nodded gratefully at her kindness. She learned that he worked in business, something about manufacturing, though he was modest about the details. What struck her most was how attentive he was to Jamie, how patient and loving. "My daddy works really hard," Jamie said, yawning as the warmth and food made him sleepy. "But he always has time for me." "That's what good daddies do," Emma said softly, tucking an extra blanket around the boy as he curled up on the couch. Later, as Jamie slept peacefully, Emma and David talked quietly in her small kitchen. She learned that David's wife had passed away 2 years earlier, and that he was raising Jamie alone. The love in his voice when he spoke of his son reminded Emma of her own father's devotion to his family. "You're very kind to help us," David said. Not everyone would open their door to strangers. Emma poured them each another cup of tea. "My grandmother used to say that kindness is just love in work clothes. Sometimes we're the ones who need help, and sometimes we're the ones who can give it." David nodded thoughtfully. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." She was. "She taught me that we're all just walking each other home, in one way or another." The next morning brought clear skies and the distant sound of a snowplow working its way through town. Emma woke to find David quietly packing their few belongings, careful not to wake Jamie, who was still sleeping soundly on the couch. "The tow truck will be here soon," David said quietly. "I can't thank you enough for what you've done." Emma waved off his thanks as she started making breakfast. "It was nothing, really. I'm just glad you're both safe." As they prepared to leave, David hesitated at the door. "Emma, I want you to have something." He pulled out a business card and pressed it into her hands. "If you ever need anything at all, please call me." Emma glanced at the card and her eyes widened. The elegant letterhead read Coleman Industries, and beneath David's name were the words Chief Executive Officer. She began, but David shook his head. "I'm just a father who was helped by a kind woman on a snowy night," he said simply. "That's all that matters." 3 weeks later, Emma received a letter in the mail. Inside was a check that made her hands tremble, along with a note written in David's careful handwriting. "Dear Emma, your kindness changed more than just one cold night for us. It reminded me that goodness still exists in unexpected places. Please accept this small token of our gratitude and use it to follow your dreams." Jamie still talks about the nice lady who made him grilled cheese triangles with endless appreciation. David and Jamie's check was enough to pay for Emma's master's degree in education, something she had dreamed of but never thought possible. More than that, it was a reminder that sometimes the kindness we give comes back to us in ways we never expect. But what Emma treasured most was the photo that came with the letter. David and Jamie building a snowman in what looked like a beautiful backyard, both of them grinning at the camera. On the back, Jamie had written in crayon, "For the nicest lady in the world." Emma placed the photo on her refrigerator, right next to her grandmother's recipe for hot chocolate. Some gifts, she knew, were worth more than money. They were reminders that in a world that could sometimes feel cold and distant, kindness still had the power to warm hearts and change lives. As she looked out at the snow beginning to fall again, Emma smiled. Somewhere out there, a father and son were safe and warm, and she had played a small part in that story. Her grandmother had been right. We really are all just walking each other home.